Hello, this video is going to be generally my memory and remembrance of Fred Rogers, in who many children called, even us as children, us adults as children, called Mr. Rogers of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. Um, I can tell you there's a lot of things I remember about him now. He did start way before I was even born, though. That's one of many things I looked at, and of course, there was only so much funding for WQED in Pittsburgh. Um, but then it got to where um, around the 1970s, at I think about 74, 75, somewhere in that area, that or possibly 72, or maybe somewhere in the 70s anyway, that he faced what was, or at least who was known as the toughest, well, negotiator to deal with, essentially. And when they let Fred Rogers, of course, what we know as Mr. Rogers, um, talk, he um, he convinced him perfectly to get, I think it was $25 million or something like that, right? And beyond that, of course, or even I didn't even we as children didn't know that that sort of thing was happening, even even before or after that, right? Um, but the things he did, it is said that things that people do, they don't have to do. The nice, caring, kind, heartfelt things that people do, they don't have to do, but they do, right? Um, he didn't do it in any aspect of asking for anything back. He didn't do it what he did to gain fame or stardom, for that matter, or notoriety. He did it out of the kindness of his heart because he felt with the many things that children were faced in the 1950s, to start with, 50s, 60s era, anyways. Wasn't really good television for children to be exposed to. I mean, we had like years after Howdy Doody, which wasn't really that poignant and positive. Then we had various others, even the old West things and whatnot, and it wasn't really good for even young children to be exposed to. He says he even reminded me, and I'm sure more than thousands of billions of other children across the United States, that using your imagination is the most is a very strong positive thing, and many of us picked up on that, didn't we? He I know the every morning when he came on, he sang the "Won't You Be My Neighbor." Mm. That was a, shall we say, a televised invite to to like a welcome, in a sense, to many children at a very young age, and I'd say that even when he sang the song as he was about to end the show, um, it's such a good feeling to know that you're alive. Mm, and and it's just a happy feeling. Mm. The one thing that I mean that sort of thing and much more has stuck with me for many years. And I remember the other part of it was, and when you wake up ready to say, I think I'll make it a snappy new day. I'd say that he instilled many positive things that many children need even nowadays at every age, practically. Not just preschool, kindergarten, toddler, what have you, right? I mean, every children needs to be reminded of it. If he was still with us today, I'd thank him. I would. But sadly enough, he passed away. Um, before I made this video, before I started making this video, essentially, is that I thought of many things. I mean, yeah, I was doing my responsibility things and whatnot, but I really wanted to make this video because what Mr. Rogers, in who I found out to be Fred Rogers, um, I still consider him to be Mr. Rogers, regardless of his actual name. Um, the one thing I don't like, though, and it's nothing that he did. It's something that was done outside his outside of the PBS station. Tom Hanks did his reprise version of Mr. Rogers. And Tom Hanks is only about stardom, notoriety, and Mr. Rogers was not about that. So basically, Tom Hanks completely defaced Mr. Rogers' memory and legacy. He may say that he didn't. I don't think I did. He did. Because ever since Bosom Buddies, Tom Hanks was about nothing but stardom, making it big. Mr. Rogers was not about that. Mr. Rogers was about was about connecting with children, making them feel welcomed, loved, cared for, and with a major amount of consideration. Mr. Rogers was about honesty. Tom Hanks didn't show that in the movie. He didn't show that in any one of his movies, regardless if he was supposed to or not. But though his version of Mister Rogers was a fundamental and total deface of the legacy of Mister Rogers and Mister Rogers' Neighborhood. If PBS were to ask me to take over, or not really take over, but continue to do the work that he did, that Mr. Rogers, aka Fred Rogers, did, I'd jump. I would more than accept it. I would more than jump to the chance to do so. And I tell you one thing also is that he taught a lot of us about the fact of if our parents were to divorce. He knew that somewhere inside of each child they think it's their fault. It's not. It's not the child's fault. It never has been, never will be the child's fault. He taught us being about about the fear of being flushed down the toilet, or going if we would go down the drain of a tub, especially. Now that right there, that sort of thing right there, I can tell you that that made me worried too. I mean, yeah, he told me there's no way we children would be. We wouldn't have to worry about going down the drain, even as we watch water in the tub, or as we take a bath, or after we take a bath, essentially, go down the drain. Doesn't mean it wouldn't. Doesn't really go to the points where we would, you know. But that's the imagination, the fearful imagination, if you will. It can get to a child. Like many things can get to a child. Even when it comes to being in a dark room. Children have a very very vivid imagination, or more, actually more than a create. Not really a vivid, but I'd say more than a creative imagination of all their own, especially when it comes to being in the dark. And I'd say being in the dark is not a good thing for children. That's why there's nightlights. Of course, nightlights aren't 100% because believe me, I've gone through the same thing. It's like, so what? So I was like, so there's a nightlight. I still don't want to be in the dark. It was that way. I was that way. I didn't care what type of nightlight it was, man. I didn't care if the door was cracked open with light there, because I knew eventually that light would be turned off. The light outside on the other side of the doorway would be turned off eventually. I knew it. I don't know how I knew it, but I knew it. um, And the things that Mr. Rogers' neighborhood, especially with the neighborhood of make believe, he did. It's true that he did most of the puppets. He did the merry-go-round puppet, and he did X the Owl, Meow Meow Kitty, and he did Daniel Tiger. He did King Friday and Queen, the Queen essentially as well. He also did a number of the other ones too, except for maybe one he may have still. I'm not sure, but after about the 1980s, that duck puppet wasn't shown very much, if hardly at all, really. Of course, there was one thing I didn't see in the 1970s because I was born around the 1970s. Because around the 1960s, they had a set of an Eiffel Tower structure in in the neighborhood of Make Believe. It's seen in the reset of the stage set of the neighborhood make believe, but it's I never saw it when I was watching Mister Rogers and I saw the neighborhood make believe. My fascination was with that trolley. My main fascination was with that trolley, straight up. Of course, the castle was different in the 1950s than it was in the 1970s as well. In fact, they showed more of it in the 1970s than what I configured that they did in the 1960s. Although I can tell you, after a while, the puppet with the looked like she had those rosy cheek things, right? After a while, she freaked me out. She did. I mean, if I really paid attention, she did freak me out. Um, I know that wasn't the intention, but I guess for a time she did. Not a lot, but you know. Um, Lady Aberlin, the one that walked around the neighborhood of make believe. She she didn't. I guess in some ways she did, but yet she didn't really connect with children. Although I'm not saying she did a bad job. I'm not saying that at all. But she took the time to talk to the puppets in front of the child or children that were watching. And I'd say if she, I don't know, I don't know if she's what she's doing now or she's retired or whatnot. But I would thank her for what she did. Although I still want to thank Mr. McFeely, speedy delivery. Mm, um, and I still do want to thank um, Mr. Rogers, of course. Of course, I already know his real name. But the one thing I took from that is, at least one of many things, anyways, I should say, really, is that no matter what goes on, no matter what happens, even around you, never stop believing in yourself. Never stop having faith and trust within yourself. And don't ever think that, don't ever, don't ever wish that you were someone else. Because we are all special and important, in, and that will never change. No matter what has happened around us, and even in our lives, that we will always be important and never change who we are. Because who we are is of its own uniqueness, and nobody can even attempt to copy it or try to reenact it. We are our own people, being that we are our own person, being human beings. How we feel is is going to be different than how other people feel at various different points in times in each part of our lives. And then what other people feel, we can easily feel, but maybe not all at the same time. If it is at the same time, there's nothing wrong with that. But if it isn't, there's nothing wrong with that either. If we can accept, if the one thing he wanted us to know, to always accept who and how we are, and and the way we learn and the way we grow, even the way we gain knowledge. But the one thing is that the way we can gain knowledge can kind of go both ways though too, right? So we always want to go towards the positive side of things as we gain knowledge, not only in the sense of education, but also in the sense that we have a better understanding of the world around us and why it is the way it is, and how we can make it better. Because there's many different, shall we say, beliefs and statements that we can make it better. But the one thing, we are already better. We are the light of the world, as it were. I know many adults even go through, even the adults before we became adults, and before we even had children of our own, that many things started going back towards confusion, didn't it? Mr. Rogers understood that it would come even as we get older. Things would get more difficult and trying. One of many things we could do is never never lean towards negative. Never lean towards negative. No, don't even go towards the aspect of thinking that we're hopeless, because we're not hopeless. Even if that feeling or sense of feeling comes through us, let it pass, because we are not hopeless. Things may be feel or seem hopeless as well. Even the things that we want and feel that we deserve and need. But even the things that we deserve or need will essentially come to us. But we cannot expect it to happen when we want it to happen. I think that's another part of what Mr. Rogers was putting out there, but he didn't say it outright, or basically in face value or whatever. And it is true though too, is that if I were to be asked to to do what Mr. Rogers did for each and every one of us, to where I'd be able to continue to do for each and every other child watching the program, as we did as children, very young children, I would. You should always know I would, because I wouldn't pass it up. I would more than jump to the chance to do so, because just as we were, our youth of this millennium, this part of the millennium, and even before the millennium, were very, very special in their own way, like we were in our own. There's a uniqueness of their own, especially. The same thing with base of innocence. We still have our own level of innocence, even though we don't pay attention to it too much, if at all, even hardly. Children, each child, no matter what year they're born, has their own innocence, has their own special level and type of innocence within them. And in some way, if not totally, it's the same as what we once had. Now, I'm not a psychologist or nothing, but I know psychology, and I know the male and female psyche. Yes, but in a way, I'm looking at something much deeper, something that even Mr. Rogers instilled in me. He never considered us in any negative way, manner, level, what have you. He never thought that we wouldn't be able to do the best things we can do, the best way we know how to. He never doubted that. He believed whatever we believed that we could do, as long as we strive towards it and as long as we continue to build upon it, especially, we would be able to be a success no matter how far we went. Even if it wasn't a full success, the 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 aspect of actually going forth with it, as far as we have gone, even from the beginning, that's okay. If we didn't feel that we would make it any further, be able to make it any further, that's okay too. But the one thing is, Never lose sight of who you are. Never lose sight of who and what and how you became of who you are even today. Never lose faith in yourself. Never lose trust and anything positive within yourself. Don't lose trust within yourself and for yourself. Don't lose anything that even Mr. Rogers put showed you that you have, that even you as a child did not see within yourself, even as a young one, because we're still exploring the world, right? At that age, we're still exploring and using our own imagination in our own way. Even as with little girls, they're doing like dress up. They're putting on their mother's shoes and and hats or earrings or any number of things, scarves, many things like that, right? And then for us, for the boys, it would be playing with cars, little action figures, ships, planes, using our own imagination that way, and maybe doing a little dress up of our own, if that, not 100%, not equal to little girls though, but especially when little girls were to play house with their little brother or their friends, and we as boys would be little boys would be playing cars and planes with our friends, and maybe building things with Legos or blocks or something, right? And as we do it, we use our own imagination as we go along, right? That's the thing, right there. That's one of many things that Mr. Rogers instilled within each and every one of us. And even when we played with the toys that were age appropriate for the time, even making music was a thing for children in our day, and still is even in today. That's another thing that Mr. Rogers put in within us to explore our talents in every which way, even if it had to do with hitting things with spoons and not spoons and forks in our hands and hitting pots and pans and lids and whatnot, right? Making music for our own, even though it wasn't really music, but to us it was. We didn't care how it sounded. Basically, that's another part of it. Mr. Rogers put within us as children, and what he continued to put in each and every child, even after our time as children. Now, I'm not saying Daniel Tigers are not doing it, but to me, and this is not a downgrade or nothing towards Daniel Tiger, the cartoon of Daniel Tiger's Neighborhood, but to me, human interaction, like Mr. Rogers looking at the camera, and we feel that he's looking at us as we're watching the program. That's the most that's the strongest thing that any child needs. Not not only in person by our own parents, aunts and uncles, grandparents, much like when we were very little, And like our children were very little, they needed the most attention as infants, and because the more they were talked to, the more the brain was able to, shall we say, expand. The more sound waves that went through here, and the more the child saw the fact that they were being talked to. That right there to start with was the positive interaction. But if it was in any negative way, like an angry thing, then they'd be scared, as we would at that age. The one thing though too is that Mr. Rogers told us a lot of things and taught us a lot of things, especially how to be creative, especially when it came to finger paints, when it came to playing with clay and whatnot. Even the aspect of like drawing or coloring with crayons, not so much with pencils or pens, but with crayons mostly. I can ask, what is it that Mr. Rogers instilled in you that you remember? What is it that he taught you? He taught me a lot of things that would take hours to say right now. He taught me things that it took time for myself to actually see within myself, as it would for any child, really. I'm not a child psychologist either, but I have a deep understanding because I'm looking at it in the sense of the child within me, because we all always had the child within us that we were once before we became the adults that we are. And for your children that are also possibly watching this, they also need to be shown not only vocally, but also shown of how important they are to each of one of us parents or grandparents, foster parents, whatever. But even grandparents would also do it. But but even parents as well as parental guardians need to show how important the child is to them and how special they are to each and every one. I mean, that's what I do with my children. I would show them how important they are to me and how more than special they are to me. How and how grateful, how more than grateful that that I am that they are in my life. Yeah, and I know it goes even to the points of where we do what we can to make sure that they get what they need. Not what they want really a whole lot, but what they need. Yeah, I know. Even for a time that it was believed that spanking was a an accepted method in discipline. Thank Heavenly Father that it's not anymore, because it didn't really serve any positive purpose for the children, for the youth of our time, and even before our time. And it wouldn't serve any purpose even in today's day and age. What would is what happened on Full House, for example, where I I can remember if it was Mary Kate or Ashley played the part of Michelle while she was sitting in the corner staring at the wall while sitting in a wooden chair for a certain length of time. Although at the same time, it's not really logical to for any child really to have this happen to where you don't serve them dinner or lunch if they do something bad after you even have as you send them to their room. Regardless of what they do, they need nourishment. That's one of many things that the the experts of the day didn't see, even in our day when we were very young. Even in the days of when Mr. Rogers first started his Mr. Rogers Neighborhood program. And don't and I'm not gonna sit here saying what parents should do or shouldn't do, but the basic fact is that there's many ways where, and this is my belief, there's many ways where children can learn and exceed and understand and have a better understanding of rights and wrongs, do's and don'ts. But the one thing is no matter how busy we are, even in today's day and age, we need to always take the time to teach them. Like in my day, it was don't touch a stove that was on. Don't touch an iron that's still hot. Don't put your hand under water that has steam coming, that form of steam going up. Don't put your hand in the garbage disposal down in the drain of the sink. Don't Don't go anywhere without letting your parents know where you're going. Of course, I never did. When I I remember when I was living in my hometown, and I'm not gonna say where my hometown is or was. Um, I knew that as long as I stayed within the grounds, my mother had no worries. Even with the fact that I was outside on the platform in the surrounded in the or if you want to call it complex. Um, and it was a pretty wide complex too. Still is. Um, she knew where I'd be outside, but granted, yes, I know I should have said where I was going. I think I believe I did it at some in some way in at one point or so later on that I remember anyways right now. But when I was younger, I didn't do it too much. I'm just going outside to play. That's it. Of course, I know my mother. From time to time, without even me knowing, she'd look out to see where I'm at if she could see me even from a distance, from even when she came out of the place that we were living in, but still in the complex. That's one of the many things I know we as parents still do even today. I know, or at least we should. And again, I'm not saying that you don't. I'm not saying you do. I'm not even judging it. I'm just saying, there are some cases where we do and we get too busy within ourselves, even within our minds, that we don't always do what we're supposed to do. And this is not a judgment. It happens. But I know there's ways we can change that. And I know that we need, and that even in today's day and age, we're expected to do things right, like that, right? That's not the logical way. The logical way is take our time as we do things. It was that way in the 1970s, 50s, 60s, and 80s, but still, people still wanted to do this in the 1990s. And many people say, "Well, this is the information age." It doesn't matter what age it is. We get things done, even as parents. We get things done, even as we raise our children. If we take our time doing things, and maybe taking a break from doing any number of things, but because the important thing is not really what we feel that we need to take care of. It's our children. Our children are the most important. Our child or children are the most important. The housework is also important to keep the place clean and whatnot and sanitary for our children to live in as well as ourselves. I know that, but many other things can be taken care of in a later date or later time, even within the week, even if we have to bring our children with us. Like we always would bring our children with us to do some food, grocery shopping or clothing shopping. Even when we don't, when we can't find anybody in our family circle to babysit. But the one thing is that also I know that even as children we would look at things while our parents would be food shopping, and we'd want we'd want a certain type of cereal that was even bad for us, and even if we didn't really pay attention too much to whether if our parents can afford to get it along with whatever they needed to get, even for dinner, lunch, whatever, you know. I tell you right now, if I saw Mr. Rogers, Fred Rogers, aka Mr. Rogers, right now, if he was right in front of me right now, I'd stand up, even while this video is playing. I would. Even while this video is playing, I would stand up and hug him. I kid you not. I would not hesitate. I would not hold back. There's a lot of things that I haven't mentioned that he's instilled within me that I didn't even know that I had. I mean, in some way or another, we knew that we had, shall we say, an imagination, but we didn't know how to go about it. And we knew that we had feelings, but we didn't know if it was right to express them. But he taught us it's okay to express our feelings, but don't harm another person as we do it. We can hit something like we can hit something like a pillow if we're really angry. But throwing things, granted, yeah, as long as it hits the wall, then yeah. But you don't want to damage anything as you do it though, or break anything for that matter. You don't want to do that either. But hitting a pillow, hitting a couch cushion, hitting a decorative little couch pillow. Mm, he said that was he taught me that was okay. I'm not gonna say if I did that or not, to be honest, but because I don't remember if I did or not, really. And of course, as time rolls on, who knows? I might later on, and I might even make another video in remembrance of Mr. Rogers' neighborhood and Mr. Rogers himself, and say it if I do remember at any given point, but I don't right now. The other part of it is that I know in the time when I was growing up, that it was acceptable to have the child have a bar of soap in your mouth. That's not a good discipline. That didn't really solve anything either. Anyway, even the spank of the hand or the belt didn't really do anything positive, or even it didn't really do anything in the aspect of discipline. Because eventually we didn't know it at the time, I'm sure, but we acted out, didn't we? In our own way. And I know it's even said, oh, when I grow up, when I have children, I'm not going to do this or I'm not going to do that. Then eventually we find that we are doing it, if not fully, at times, even more than at times, of the things that were essentially shown and done to us as children. So I know I'm not going to say, well, as if you catch yourself saying that, you know, at some point or another, you're going to repeat at least a percentage of what you say you're not going to do that your parents did have done to discipline you, because eventually you will do it. Maybe not 100%, but you will do it to at least a moderate percentage. And I'm not because a percent. I'm not going to say the percentage because the percentage can change per person. Be that, of course, it could be different per person, per new parent or a first-time parenting, essentially. I can't say if I thought, well, if I have children, I'm not gonna do this or I'm not gonna do that, but I am gonna do this. I am gonna do that. I can't say if I thought that. I may have. I'm not gonna. I'm not gonna. I'm not gonna discount whether if I did or didn't, but I don't remember, to be honest. But even if we do even voice it out, there will come a time, if it hasn't already, there will come a time that you will repeat at least a percentage. It could be a double digit percentage, or it could be a single digit percentage at any number that you will repeat the same thing or have already repeated the same thing that was done to you when you were a child. It's you can call it inevitable or inevitable, whatever, but in some way you will find, even if you don't notice at first, but even say for example if you do it more and more, you will eventually find that you are doing and are doing it to a percentage of what was done to you as a child. That the very thing that you said you would never do. I'm sure that many of our parents said, "Oh, I'm never gonna spank my child with a belt. I'm never gonna spank my child with a hand. I'm never gonna do this to my child." Then eventually they do, don't they? Didn't they? Actually, there's another part of it. Think about what your parents, our parents could have easily said the same thing that we have said that we will never do to our own children. But eventually we do find that we're doing it even to a percentage. But I know that many aspects is that, well, if we do it, then aren't we like our parents? No, because if we were to be like our parents, Mr. Rogers would have said so, right? For one, even as children. But he would have said that. But the basic fact is that If that was true, then he would be like his parents. He's not, and he didn't, and he wasn't. He was his own person. You are your own person. Our children are their own person, starting from within, and that will never change. People do change, yes, but who we are and who we strive to be, but we can't expect it to happen overnight. We can't expect things to be given to us that we feel that we should have and deserve, or the aspect of entitled to, which basically the only true entitlement is spiritual entitlement. The entitlement of the human aspirations or expectations is non-existent. Mr. Rogers, you taught me a lot that I didn't even realize that I knew. Granted, I built up more knowledge as I got older, yes, as I grew, as we all do. But there's a lot of things that I began to even understand, and that we all begin to understand in our own way, time levels, and what have you else. That we may have maybe at some point or in some way or some reason as well that we've ignored and kind of brushed off for some reason or another, in some way or another, that we may be able to reassess and reanalyze, re-examine, even for ourselves, even for as we raise our children and help raise our grandchildren. There's many things that you can tell. There's many things that I began to understand, and I think, and I have to thank not only Mr. Rogers, but my mother. She did the best way she could, and I'm not gonna down her for anything that she thought she was doing right, even if it wasn't. She felt that she was a first time parent, just like I am. She did what the best way she could. She she taught me the things that she felt that I needed to know. Granted, she wanted me to read more, and of course I didn't. I didn't want to read. I hated reading. Do I still hate reading? Not so much. It's not the base of wisdom or nothing, but even children can learn to the extent and of where I'm at, even before they get to where I'm at in age, even before they get to where you're at in age. But we can't be pushing things upon them because the more pressure we put on a child as well as we put on ourselves, it doesn't solve anything, it doesn't help anything. And it doesn't make anything better either. even if we're told by past experiences that it would put pressure on ourselves. It doesn't help. It doesn't solve a dang thing. It doesn't help. It doesn't help either person. It just puts pressure on us, and we don't need pressure. I mean, life in itself is precious, unique, important, special, much like each and every one of us are. Even our children are. Even we as children were and still are. Yet I know we more than tend to forget that and ignore that, or even don't even pay attention to it because of the day-to-day responsibilities we've either added on to ourselves or that were expected of that's even expected of us. Even if our children are out doing their own thing in high school, college, elementary school, playing in the play yard or whatever, right? Or taking naps. Even while our children is taking naps, we still have the the inclinations of responsibilities, or even thoughts of responsibilities that we need to take care of. And the one thing is that, like I said, no matter what, our children are numero uno. Ourselves are also numero uno. The father is numero uno. The mother's numero uno. The child also is top numero uno before anything else. It goes children, top, numero uno. Parents, mother and father, numero uno, like this. But also in some cases, it could be like this. Numero uno, numero uno. Child or children, parents, mother and father, before anything else. That's one of many things we should never forget. And so it is more than speculated that even our parents relearn or were retaught things that as we were being taught things by Mr. Rogers. Even as they saw us um, being taught the things and learning the things from Mr. Rogers, as well as say Sesame Street and all that, right? Um, our parents were also being taught, even the things that they were not being taught for their when they were children. It's always good. It's always a good thing to be re-educated. There's nothing bad about that. To have a better understanding of things, especially even a deeper understanding. And yes, over time, our children, as they become adults, they will learn the same thing. Maybe in a different way, different manner, what have you, but they will learn the same thing. They will essentially come to realization, if you will, of the same thing that I just said. And that same realization may repeat itself even when we're not around. I may make another video, by the way, of the Mr. Rogers neighborhood, but I'm not sure yet. But I hope you you know that even the ones in special needs need the attention, maybe more than normal, or maybe in the same level, even no matter how continuous it may be. But the one thing is that we need to, no matter what age the child is, we need to show that they are still and will always be important, even if they have their own bad days, as we did at their age. We need to comfort them and help them understand things, but not with any force or anger or whatever. Just honesty, compassion, truthful, love, caring, everything positive and gentle and truthful. I'm not saying we aren't truthful to our children and for our children, but the you know, to help them expand with not only for themselves and within themselves emotionally and psychologically, but also to where they have a deeper understanding of their own. And I know it will take time as the days progress. But if you are to have a child, if you haven't had a child, that's one of many things you need to really focus on. Be more than aware, more than wary of. Because it's not going to be where you have a child and you can go about your day. Because children need children from the aspect of from the age of infant. They need the most care, attention, the whole enchilada there, to where and even when they become toddlers, same thing. And when they become to the points of grade school, elementary school, and kindergarten, though, but not really in that order, really. You're going to have to continuously have them come first. Because once you have children, you cannot go to the point where like you were a teenager or in your 20s. Be there, of course, BC before children essentially. Because that BC before children aspect or ratio or whatever, or shall we say scenario is non-existent once that child is born. The actions, the things that you were able to do and feel able to do aside from your responsibilities is non-existent. You still do your responsibilities, but your responsibilities are added on to with that child or children. There's more responsibilities of making sure not only you're fed there, but they're fed. That you're clothed and they're clothed. That their needs are met as well as yours. But their needs first. The child's needs first. No matter how unfair you may think it's may sound and seem, it will not change. And you're gonna have to eventually get used to it. Because once you have a child or children, your responsibility, your aspect of being able to go out and have fun is going to be less and less because your responsibilities of of taking care of your child and yourself is going to be job one. Yes, I know, but as parents, we don't get paid like we do as we get employed out in the real world. But the thing that we do get is something m- much more important, much more special, much more endearing. We even beyond endearing. When we take care of a child, help them exceed, even as we gradually exceed ourselves. Help them learn the world around them in a safe and proper way. They may not thank you for it, but as time goes on, they will. And I know that in their own way, they will always love each and every one of us as they even go out on their own. They may not pay attention to what we did for them too much at first, but as they get older, they will, guaranteed. I know I have, and I know you have. You as parents have, but I know the children will do. It's a repeating thing on there too. It may not seem like it or feel like it, or even in the viewing aspect of things, especially the way the children react towards us, even as we do things with them and for them. But they will essentially and eventually see why we did it and what the reasons were. They may not understand it in teenage or 20-year-old, but when they get older, believe me. And like I said, I will make another one, possibly, but I'm not sure yet. But if you have any questions or anything, if you want to talk, please let me know in the comment section below. And also, I have a Mr. Rogers Neighborhood page on Facebook. We can also talk there. Please stay safe. And I know that Mr. Rogers is still with us in our hearts and in our minds. And I thank him for what he's done. I mean, what he taught me and what he taught you. I'm sure you thank him for that as well. Have a good day.